We just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you, Alex, which we rarely get to do. So thank you from the Humanitarian Innovation Project, but also the Refugee Studies Centre for your strong leadership and your support and your enthusiasm for pushing the boundaries of humanitarianism. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm extremely touched. That's very unexpected and very kind. I also want to thank you for still being here at this time on a Saturday and listening to the closing remarks of the conference. I really promise to be very brief, but I can't leave here without at least saying a few words to bring this to a close. I mean, first of all, I just have to say thank you to all the panelists. That was a really enjoyable, wonderful debate and everything I hoped it would be. I just have to restrain myself now from weighing in on the discussion. I think there are three things I just want to cover in my closing remarks. I want to reflect a little bit on what I think we've achieved here over the last couple of days. Secondly, say a little bit about what I think this conference is and is becoming as a community. And thirdly, say a number of words of thanks to the people who have really done the work behind this conference. In terms of what we've done, I think it's worth noting and being aware that 5 years ago, this topic and area didn't even exist. And now, to some extent, we're a community, and we're a community with diverging perspectives. We don't have consensus on everything, and that's extremely healthy. But I think we're making progress because we're stronger working together. We're creating a community that's prepared to share ideas across sectors, bridge divides between government, international organizations, NGOs, business, community-based organizations, affected populations, share our knowledge, and tolerate differences and be inclusive, and I think that's a wonderful thing that is emerging. I think what's interesting about this conference is to reflect on where we've come since last year. In many ways, the first conference was a chance to ask the what of humanitarian innovation, to think about what it means as a set of concepts. And I think last year, what came out of the conference was a recognition it's not just about technology, as we've seen today, but technology can play an important role. That crucially there was a recognition that affected communities are a part of that debate, that they have skills, talents and aspirations to build upon. And we have to underpin this idea of cross-sectoral inclusivity and learning. This year I think we've worked more on the how, about how do we overcome structural barriers and constraints to enable innovation. What are the particular barriers that exist and what are the opportunities to overcome them? Barriers that exist within organizations and their bureaucracies, within the humanitarian ecosystem as a whole, and barriers that lock out people who should have a voice in these debates, should be represented, and too often are not. I obviously can't summarize this conference for a number of reasons. There have been so many rich, diverse perspectives, examples, good practices that we have to learn from, and I couldn't possibly do justice to them. I also think what's interesting about this conference is you will all have had different conferences. There have been so many panels, so many workshops, so many opportunities to learn, so many spaces, so many private conversations, that you will all have had your own unique journey over the last couple of days. What we're going to do is compile a report. We're going to put videos and podcasts online so that you can relive a different journey through the conference at a later stage. I also think what's important is this can't be summarized fully because it's not an issue that has complete answers. It's a debate and a dialogue in progress, and it will continue to be the case. But I just have 5 brief reflections on what I think I've seen in my journey and what I've learned over the last few days. I think the first thing is that it's important to get the basics right, that there's a lot we can do that is actually very simple and needs to be done. I was very struck by Aaron Leibovitz's comment in one of his questions, where he says, on the one hand, there are new ideas, but on the other hand, there are ideas that already exist elsewhere. They work, and we don't know that they exist. And Paul Weiss built on that to highlight that that can have serious consequences. He said it's a tragedy if a child dies, but it's an injustice if a child dies from a preventable disease. And I think that's a call for us to share knowledge, collaborate, engage in better structures of knowledge management, and ensure that we don't have inadequate humanitarian responses just because we don't know about an idea that can address that particular problem. The second thing I wanted to highlight that I think is really important that's come out is the recognition that there are underlying structural barriers that block progress and progressive innovation. Barriers in politics, governance, bureaucracy, and that we have to address those. I was struck by David Stuckler asking the question of, if things should exist, we shouldn't just argue that we need to bring them into existence or cross-fertilize knowledge, but ask why it is they don't exist. What are the underlying power structures? What are the blockages in the system? Who are the gatekeepers? And highlight that and address those issues. Niels Harold and Emiliano Fernandez highlighted the idea that there are big elephants in the room, the restrictions that are often imposed by governments but also within organizations, and we have to acknowledge and overcome them. Equally, in the humanitarian sector, there are often ideas that block our progress. Sara Pantuliano this morning highlighted that many humanitarian ideas, including neutrality, and Paul Weiss built on this idea, suffer from not recognizing the surrounding politics. I think the third thing that I take from this is that we've got to overcome boundaries to dialogue. They are still there. And to do that, we have to be very brave. I think Ben Parker highlighted that the WHS was rather like turkeys organizing Christmas, in a sense. It risked organizations managing their own destruction and their own sunset clause. And I think that means it's a brave thing to debate particularly paradigmatic changes, and there's often a fear of change and inertia in the system. I was also very struck by Hunter Hunt's comment on the private sector panel about the fact that often the perception and sometimes stereotypes of the private sector create barriers to engagement, and that actually it takes a lot of persistence and a lot of courage sometimes as a business to keep knocking on the door of the humanitarian sector. So I think we need to be inclusive, but we need to be brave in breaking down those barriers. The fourth thing that struck me, and it came out again in this panel, is that not all innovation is good. Sara Pantuliano this morning gave the example of Al-Qaeda as an innovative organization, saying that it's in a way the first transnational, networked, non-state armed group. It is highly innovative. That doesn't make it good. And it means ethically we need to be vigilant about what good innovation is and what bad innovation is. And that's where I think codes of conduct, like the one that Patrick has highlighted from the workshop he's been at, have a particular role to play, as to the idea of possible principles for ethical humanitarian innovation that are being worked on in the World Humanitarian Summit. And finally, and you'll hear me say this probably every year, I take from this that we have to do much more to work with and include the voices of affected communities, that it's their creativity and their representation that has to shape and guide all our work. So secondly, and more briefly, what is this conference? Well, we're still learning and we're still iterating and innovating to find ways to create a space for dialogue that works and serves a purpose and has impact. What does success mean for a conference? I think that's a very hard thing because some of the impact may be measurable and others are far more diffuse. I think three things hopefully come out of a conference like this. Firstly, new networks. You know new people, you connect, you take those forwards. Secondly, new ideas. But thirdly, maybe new collaborations in new areas of work. And one of the things that's been most gratifying for me this conference is to have people come to me who were here last year and say, I met this person and we've worked together and we've done something different. And if you're in that situation, please tell us those stories because we'd love to have them, we'd love to hear about them and know what impact we've had. But I think as we define our identity as a conference, a number of features stand out about what we're trying to do. And the first is to offer a platform for new voices, new ideas, and not to be a platform that's only open to the people at the top of organizations, not the celebrities, not the people who are absolutely at the top, but the people with really good ideas, perspectives, different perspectives. And we want to take risks in who we offer the platform to so that they can be introduced. And sometimes that may work better than others, but I think we want to be not guided by titles or hierarchies, but be an inclusive space for divergent voices that collectively take us forwards. Secondly, I think in terms of tone, Alex Alenikov defined innovation last year as iterative problem solving among friends. And I'd really like to emphasize the friends part of this, because I think a good friend works with you collaboratively, but they don't have to agree with everything you say all of the time. We can challenge one another as friends so that we can be better collectively. And I think that's something that we've really tried to do, to strike that right balance between challenging and debate, but having a tone of participation, inclusivity, and tolerance. And thirdly, I think again, echoing that, the core feature of what we do has to be inclusivity. It has to be to ensure that we set aside some of our prejudices about sectors and provenance of ideas and judge the ideas rather than the people and the sectors they're coming from. So finally, I want to say a few words of thanks, because this is a conference that's been put together by many, many people. First of all, thank you to all of you for being here, for coming last year to what in many ways is a work in progress, a sort of experimental way of bringing different people together. We're really grateful as well for the people who have chaired panels. I've been stunningly impressed by the quality of the chairing, the debate that's been facilitated, the ideas that have been teased out, and all of you who have been willing to present and share ideas and been so generous in the discussions with your thoughts. I'm very grateful to the World Humanitarian Summit for co-sponsoring this event and giving everyone here a possibility, therefore, to include their voices within that process. I really need to say again a really warm thank you to Stephanie and Hunter. They have in many ways co-created the Humanitarian Innovation Project with us. They are people who have contributed their ideas, their thoughts, who have nurtured the team's work all the way through and show a great deal of interest in all of the work that we do and the people here. So I want to just say a huge thank you to you for creating us in the first place. And I also want to say thank you to my core team who I work with on a day-to-day basis in the Humanitarian Innovation Project. Louise, now, and Josiah, who you will have seen chairing panels in here. They're a terrific team and incredible to work with. I want to also say an enormous thank you to 2 interns we've had recently who have made a huge contribution to the project and the planning for this conference. Jacqueline Marcatilli and Cara Tarr. They've come over from Stanford, they've brought ideas, creativity, and we're very, very privileged to have them with us. There are a number of people as well who have been part of an incredibly generous volunteer team who have effectively run the last 2 days for us. Everyone in a HIP t-shirt has been unpaid, they've given up their time, they've run around, they've done menial tasks, they've made this conference the event it has been. And so I am going to name all of them, and I hope you'll bear with me because they're deserving of far more than a mention. Evan Easton Calabria, Anduni Marden, Megan Bailey, Ellie Barth, John Edwards, Julia Gonzalez, Helen Leung, Tui Tran, Kat Ngadamian, Tamsin Webster, Tsai Yin, Nora Bardelli, Ella Gunn, Tiffany Shakespeare, Mary Byrne, and Esther Carter. Thank you very much. And before I conclude, I also want to thank a number of other people. Thank you to John, the technician up at the back. You've been incredible. We've challenged you with our inability to put microphones on correctly. You've been extraordinary with managing the sound. It's not the case you just flick the on switch on the sound and audio system as I imagined. You've got to be there at the back following everything and listening to things that are not necessarily your area of primary interest on a Saturday. So John, thank you. You've been extraordinary. I want to say a huge thank you to my very good friend Chris Kelly and his assistant Matt Bowles, who have been filming this. They've come over from Dallas to do so, and we're really very grateful to you. And to Dragonfly, Dishad, and Owen, who have also been filming and have operated the live stream and will be putting up some videos very shortly. Thank you very much for being with us. And finally, and definitely not least, but last on my list because of how important she's been to this conference, I really have no words to describe how talented Nina is. She's one of those people who doesn't seem to actually know how talented she is and how good at her job she is. My greatest fear at the moment is that one of the organizations here will also recognize how talented she is and that I won't be able to keep her for very long. She stepped in a month before the conference last year working on a part-time basis and did an incredible job with that conference. I think what people also don't know is that managing this conference is only a small percentage of her job, but you've all had interaction with her over the last few months. She's managed that sizable team of volunteers, and you're an extraordinary talent, Nina. I've never witnessed management skills, coordination skills like it. It's incredible to witness, and I think a huge amount of anything that's been successful about this conference is attributable to you and the coordination of the larger team. So Nina, thank you on behalf of all of us. And I wish you a safe journey home, and I hope you will take the ideas, networks, and your plans for what you'll do next home with you. Have a safe journey back.